Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I'm going to talk about Dawn of War, the Definitive Edition. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, I'm going to dive right in. Dawn of War came out like 20 years ago, and back then I played the hell out of this game. Not just it, but all of its expansions. They did release an anniversary edition at some point, but this version, they've done some remastering. They've cleaned up the graphics, they fixed the interface, they made it work with 4K much easier, and all around just kind of gave it some tweaks. Now, when I loaded it up, I got to admit, I was a little surprised to see that the graphics are pretty much the same. I guess they did clean up a few textures and things, added a few effects to the weapons and that sort of stuff. But for the most part, this is not going to look dramatically different. This is not like what they did with Resident Evil, where they practically started from scratch and rebuilt the graphics to look stunning. This is more of it's going to work better on your newer PCs, and you're going to be able to basically play it at higher resolutions without having to basically guess at what the interface was telling you. Now, that said, this does come with all of the expansions. You do get the main game, Winter Assault, Dark Crusade, and Soulstorm. You can play all of them straight from the same main menu. Furthermore, there is an upgrade. If you had the Anniversary Edition, they'll give you a little bit of a discount. I got it for $17 and was able to dive right in. It's super cool. Now, my first thing I tried was I ran a Soulstorm map. So the game started out with the original having a narrative campaign. There's a lot of over-the-top acting, a defined story that you go through, fairly linear. You know, each mission takes you to a specific place. Then the second expansion came out, and that time they did another narrative game, but it actually had some branching choices that you could basically play through multiple times to get the whole story. Then after that, Dark Crusade came out, and that's when they sort of made it into this more tactical thing where you could pick any of the factions, and then you started on one planet, conquered that one, moved to the next one, and so forth. It was kind of like every time you did an attack, it was like the skirmish mode where you just basically, it was your units versus whoever you're fighting, and there wasn't really any sort of triggered moments or any of that kind of stuff. Now, while I did enjoy playing every faction, I missed that story, and so that's a little bit sad. Now, I can say that back when this came out, I did beat every faction, and while I was doing it today, just the one mission I played in Soulstorm before I went back and tried other modes, I have to admit, I have no idea how I did it. And then I thought about it, and I realized that real-time strategy was a lot more prominent back then, and I was really into it. Command and Conquer, Warcraft, tons of them. I can't even think of all of them. There were just so many, and there was a lot of random ones too that were actually still pretty fun. And I know that me and my friends were playing those quite a bit, so it's not as big of a shock that I was able to immerse myself in that kind of stuff. But now, today, basically 20 years after it came out, I have to admit, it's freaking chaotic. That could be a good thing. Maybe you're into that and you want the challenge, but for me, it gets to a point where you're like, I don't even know if I can use my abilities. Stuff is happening so fast. Yeah, I got to find a specific character and use their crack grenade and then pick another character and fortify them or whatever. And it's almost just easier to throw units at the problem rather than try to get all specific and use their cool powers. Which in this case, once I got to the point where I remembered that, I didn't even make the Death Cult Assassin as cool as they are. I mean, they have a really neat set of abilities, but I wasn't going to try and sneak around. There's just too many of the Imperial Guard, and the Imperial Guard is a horde army, and that takes full effect here. You just encounter swarms of them. So it just ended up being simpler to say, here's all my forces, toss them up there, and then queue forces so that if anybody died, they'd automatically start building, which is kind of nuts. I don't remember how I played it back then or how I made it through. I assume I was just better at it, and I was able to use those abilities and not basically just fight a battle of attrition. That said, I mean, I did have fun. I couldn't really see myself doing this again. I think that the amount of time I had for this got sucked away when it first came out, because I know I dumped hours upon hours upon hours into these games. I mean, I love them. I mean, I bought them when they were on CD. This is the kind of stuff that is primarily for folks who are desperate for some really good nostalgia, and it definitely provided that. I was brought right back to when I was playing them before. Or if you've never played any of the games like this and you have a tolerance for this style, as in there's some quality of life improvements, but for the most part, this is a pretty standard real-time strategy game, and it is of its time. So they couldn't change that much about it. You know, if you look at the progression of how the Dawn of War games went, in this one, I'm building tons of units. I've got crazy amounts of characters on the board. Whereas in Dawn of War 2, they started to shrink it down so you're using smaller squads. And then in Dawn of War 3, you're practically not even building larger units. Even with the orcs, you don't have as many guys. And then, of course, the complaints about that game you could find in all of the reviews. So back when this one came out, it was more following the Command and Conquer Warcraft model, not Warcraft 3, mind you, because that's a little bit more like Dawn of War 2. We have a hero who's going to be leading whatever units, and you have maybe 3 or 4 heroes doing whatever it's going to do. In this game, I would say that you're going to be spending a lot of time just, again, building up a base or two, conquering a zone, and then moving on to the next one. That's how Soulstorm and Dark Crusade work. So it's a lot of, okay, I did it. I had all this cool stuff, and now I'm moving on to the next section, and I'm kind of starting from scratch. Granted, there are some small things, like your main character does get some war gear, and they specifically become better. You can fortify the areas that you've left behind to make them harder to take, so in case an enemy attacks one, you have to do that kind of fight. But I gotta be honest, even back when I loved these games and played the hell out of them, that kind of stuff was frustrating when someone would attack one of your former bases, because you're looking at like a 20 or 30, sometimes 40-minute battle just to defend something, and you don't really have any progress there. You know, if you're constantly like, I just want to move, I gotta have progress, then it can be annoying. More importantly, though, this game does require some patience. This requires a level of patience that I think was more common when it originally came out. I mean, I had a lot more patience for games back then. I was willing to put up with a lot of crazy stuff just because it was a cool setting or they had some cool features or whatever. But nowadays, as I was playing through this, I have to admit, I was like, come on, let's go, let's move. And then once it got to the point where everything was coming down, I was like, whoa, slow down. It's kind of funny. Now, that all said, at this point in gaming, I am terrible at real-time strategies. It's been far too long since I've played one seriously. I can't actually remember a modern one I've tried. I've done some revisits. I revisited Dawn of War, the whole series, on this channel. But as far as like other real-time games, I don't remember the last one that I played. I guess I just found myself tapped out on it. I played enough of them back when they originally came out, and that genre sort of drifted to the side. Other things started to take its place. I found myself more interested in like immersive FPS games or multiplayer games, things like Destiny. MMOs really took off. I got very much into things like, ESO and World of Warcraft and all of those. But when I sat down to this and I played it today, I have to admit, yes, I did have fun. However, at the end of my multiple little playthroughs where I was messing around and trying different things, I was kind of over it, and I felt like, you know what, this was fun, but I can't really see myself dedicating another 10 hours, another 5 hours, or even really 3 hours. I do kind of like the fact that you could play a mission in 20 to 40 minutes, and then you're just done, and you could put it away, save the game, and move on. But that said, I just feel that there's a sort of futility to going through those. That's just me. That's just the sense I've got. That's nothing on the game. That's totally me. I would say that while the graphics are not significantly better and it sort of looks a little clunky still, I do believe that they did a good job of getting it geared up for the modern day computer. The resolution alone is great. The new interface, or the cleaned up interface, I should say, is much easier to handle. When I did my revisit, I had to jump through all kinds of hoops to make the game work. Obviously, they fixed that completely, so you can just load it up and go. But really, this is like a page of gaming history. And while it was really fun to revisit again, I have to say that sometimes these games were more about just seeing what was and going, wow, that was really cool. I'm going to go back to 2025 as opposed to staying there too long. That said, I will reiterate that if you didn't play this the first time, you absolutely should. If you've got the tolerance for all of the quirks and maybe you have a better ability to manage all of the stuff going on than I do. And if you do, then you'll probably have a great time. But anyway, let me know what you think. Have you played the Dawn of War Definitive Edition? Did you play the Anniversary Edition? Do you like these games? Do you think they should have spent the time on this? Let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it. But anyway, this is Robert with Society Case Files signing off.